Hey there, I'm estate planning attorney Paul Rabelais, and in this video, we're going to talk about the top 10 estate planning objectives that Americans have. These are the things that, when I ask them to finish this sentence, I want to, as part of my estate planning, I want to make sure that, these are the top 10 answers to finishing out that sentence. All right, so I'm going to go kind of fast, just in the interest of time. Don't want to waste your time. 1 through 10, not necessarily in any particular order. They're all important. And at the end, you'll be the judge to determine what are your most important estate planning objectives. Number 1 is people say, Paul, I just want to make it easy. And the thought behind that is a lot of people realize there's a lot of red tape, a lot of bureaucracy, and the whole estate settlement process, having to deal with courts and lawyers and delay and accountings and title issues and accounts being frozen and having to deal with the legal departments of financial institutions before funds are released. Some people just say, boy, I know it can be a mess. So when I die, I just want to set things up so that it's easy for my loved ones. That's number 1. Number 2 is I want to make sure, Paul, that I protect my spouse. The thought behind that, Paul, my spouse and I, we've been married for decades. Whatever we have, what little we leave behind, we've built it together. And I want to make sure that my spouse is protected when I pass away. And it's usually, I want to make sure that either number 1, my spouse has immediate access to funds when I pass away. So that's one of the protect my spouse's objectives. And then the other protect my spouse's objective is, after I pass away, yes, I want my spouse to have immediate access to funds, but I also want my spouse to have long-term access and availability to assets. So usually conversations there about, if my spouse wants to sell the home that we paid for together, I don't want my spouse to have to get permission from other people to do that. So a lot of discussion about I want to protect my spouse. That's number 2. Number 3, kind of similar, but Paul, I'm here because I want to set up my estate in a way that I want to protect my kids. And that might evolve into a conversation about, I'm married, but even if I die before my spouse, I want some things to go to my kids then. Or maybe it's if I'm married and if I die before my spouse, I want what I have to go available for my spouse, but when my spouse later dies, I want to do what I need to do right now to make sure that I leave things and they are available for my spouse. But when my spouse dies, those assets or the remaining assets would revert back to my children, not necessarily my spouse's heirs or who my spouse would want those assets to go to when my spouse passes away. So number 3, want to protect the kids. Number 4, this is a broad one. This is Paul, I have a unique situation I need to address with my estate planning. This issue is so broad, I think I'm gonna have to make another video on all the various unique situations that people address. But for now, I'm gonna say some of those common unique situations that people come see me to address are perhaps because of one or more of the heirs' management skills or mismanagement skills. They don't want heirs receiving assets in a lump sum, or maybe it's just because the heirs are very young and they don't have the capability of managing a lump sum inheritance all at once. Maybe another unique situation is people want certain assets to go a certain way. I want to make sure my home goes to my daughter. She's going to need a place to live, and other assets go to my other children. Some people say, I want to leave assets to my grandchildren to make sure they get a head start on life or they're able to get an education. So there are many, many unique circumstances that people want to address with their estate planning. So number 4 is I want to provide for a unique family situation that I have. Number 5, the number 5 reason people get engaged in their estate planning is they express that I want to make sure that we avoid all these taxes. And I'll admit there are many circumstances where when arranging your estate the right way, taxes can be avoided, minimized, deferred. income taxes on things like retirement account distributions, people who are really wealthy and have assets in excess of the estate tax exemption. There's lots of moves there that can be made to help those families minimize or avoid the federal estate tax. But there's some things that you kind of don't even have to do anything to avoid taxes. So for example, there's not going to be any estate tax as long as your estate is under $11.7 million. That $11.7 million exemption may change, but for now, as long as your estate's under that, the estate taxes are avoided. Your heirs or beneficiaries are going to get the benefit of the step up in basis from a capital gains tax perspective when you die, as long as your assets are in your estate when you die. And then there's a general rule that says, and I know there's different types of rules that apply to different types of assets. So if you leave a traditional IRA to a beneficiary, they're going to have to pay income tax on distributions. But other than those unique types of assets, the general rule is an inheritance is income tax free. You leave your checking account, you leave your savings account to someone. They don't have to pay income tax on that inheritance under the general rule of an inheritance is income tax free. So there's a lot of people are often pleasantly surprised when they understand the income, capital gains tax, and estate tax ramifications of either leaving an estate or inheriting an estate. But nonetheless, the desire to avoid estate tax is one of those things that people express right from the get-go. That's why we have that as reason number 5. Reason number 6, or objective number 6, as to why people engage in estate planning is they say something like, Paul, I want to keep the government out of my estate. And usually that falls into a couple of different categories. One category is, I know that there's all that probate stuff. I went through it when my parent died, my uncle died, and it took a long time. It was difficult. It was expensive. I don't understand why, Paul, I can leave my $1 million IRA to my 3 children, name them as beneficiaries. When I die, they produce a death certificate, and voila, they get the money. However, if I want to leave my $300,000 brokerage account to my 3 children, they've got to go through a ton of red tape and a bunch of government and judicial supervision and hire lawyers and go through all that red tape to get that. I don't understand that. That's a valid concern. So there are ways that people can arrange their estate so they don't have to go through all of that government supervision of the settling of the estate when they die. A lot of that involves establishing certain types of living trusts that avoid all of the court and attorney involvement when you pass away. And then the other issue surrounding I want to keep the government out of my estate involves objective number 7, which I'm going to address next because it deserves its own objective. It's the I want to protect my estate if I get sick and need long-term care. Sometimes people feel a little uneasy kind of voicing that concern, voicing that objective. You know, they'll start with, Paul, I want to make sure I protect my estate. And I'm like, you know, you're not telling me enough. When you say you want to protect your estate, tell me what you want to protect your estate from. And then it gets pulled out of them. Well, Paul, what I really want to protect my estate from is if I get sick and I need to go into a nursing home in the future, they usually tell me something like, I don't want the government to get it all. I don't want Medicaid to get it all. I don't want the nursing home to get it all. So they feel strongly about it. And it's why I mention this as reason or objective number 7 for people in America when they voice their estate planning objectives. The tricky part about it is all this, you know, I'm going to be blunt here. All this, what happens when you pass away discussion really needs to be addressed before you pass away. And nobody knows when they're going to pass away. So the earlier you plan for that, the better. However, I want to protect it if I need long-term care in the future, that needs to be addressed at least 5 years before you get sick. Nobody knows when they're going to get sick, thank goodness. But, and so nobody knows when 5 years before that is. But too many people wait too long who want to protect what they have from having to spend it all if they go in a nursing home. Objective number 8, Paul, I want to protect my children's inheritance in case they get divorced in the future. Or maybe how do we keep it in the bloodlines? That's one of my objectives. Sometimes that objective of protecting your children's inheritance from their divorces may not be the number one objective. In fact, you may not have even thought about it. But when it gets brought up to you, a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I have to have that. Let's make sure we address that issue. And so I hear all kinds of things. So when that issue gets brought up of protecting your children's inheritance from their divorces, I usually hear one of three reasons why people want to do that. One might be a very blunt, Paul, I hate my son-in-law, and if he walks away with a penny of my money, I will roll over in my grave. Let's do what we need to do to protect my daughter. So that's the harsh one. The second one, a little bit softer, but still, we hear it a lot. Paul, we just don't really, we like our daughter-in-law, and she's a good mother, but, we just don't really trust our daughter-in-law. So we want to make sure that, whatever we leave to our son, it always stays with just our son. And then there's the one that's even a little bit softer. Paul, we love our in-laws. We are so fortunate that we have excellent daughters-in-law and sons-in-law. We treat them like our own. But Paul, these days, you just never know. And because you never know what might happen, we want to make sure that we take whatever steps we can take to make sure our children's inheritance is protected from their past, present, or future potential divorces. So that's why we put that as objective number 8. Objective number 9, Paul, I want to make sure the right people are in charge when I can't do things for myself, when I pass away, because a lot of families bicker about who's going to be making the decisions. And I bet deep down, who should be making those decisions regarding who handles your money when you perhaps get older and you're not able to make your own financial decisions. Who makes all your medical decisions when you're not able to make your own? Who do you want involved in your decisions regarding, withholding, withdrawing life support machines if you're in that vegetative state with no chance of recovery? Who do you want having now those burial decisions that need to be made regarding funerals and cremation and all those other things that people talk about regarding burial decisions and funeral decisions? And then who's going to make all those decisions that are made from the point that you pass away until your estate gets settled weeks, months, or years later? And so all of those decisions could be made by the same person or people, or you could appoint different people to make different decisions, but making those can be some of the most important decisions that you make. So objective number 9 is I want to make sure the right people are making my decisions in the future. And then reason number 10 is just a general one, but I hear it a lot. It's the Paul, my objective here is I just, I know what I know and I don't know what I don't know, but I know enough to know that I got to do something. I've never done anything from an estate planning perspective. I've never signed any estate legal documents, and I just want the peace of mind that comes from knowing that my estate is in order. So some people don't have this, this itch that they've got to scratch because of some unique or unusual family situation, but estate planning is just one of those things. I think the general public knows if I do nothing, there's exposures that my state will have that I would like to eliminate by getting my legal affairs in order. So objective number 10 is just, I want the peace of mind that comes from knowing that we've gone through this process, made the appropriate decisions, and put things in place so things will be as easy as they can be for my family. So that's objective number 10. Now, what I suggest is before you engage in the estate planning process, you may want to take a look at this video again, find out what your primary estate planning objectives are so that as you go through the process, you can assure yourself that your most important estate planning objectives are being met. And then the other important thing that you need to do is make sure you hit the like button and also subscribe to the channel so you don't miss anything. I'd hate to see you miss some of this important advice. And so make sure, we got about 15,000 other subscribers out there. Make sure you join that kind of elite group and stay tuned, and we'll see you next time.